So let's take our first look at Microsoft Visual Studio 2005. When you first start Microsoft Visual Studio, you'll be presented with a splash screen that kind of looks like this. This splash screen shows you all of the products that are installed on your computer and, of course, who it's licensed to. Let's take a quick tour of the Interactive Development Environment, or IDE. This is a screenshot of what the general interface looks like. The appearance and layout can differ depending upon the setup and installation settings that you chose when you installed Visual Studio 2005. What you see here is the main interface. Now, let's break down the screen into its component parts. Here we have the caption bar. When you load a solution, you'll notice that the name of a solution is displayed in the caption bar. Here is the menu bar. From here you have access to all of the functionality of Microsoft Visual Studio. One of the most interesting aspects of Visual Studio is that the functionality active in each of the menus is context sensitive. What that means is that the menu choices can be grayed out or inactive depending upon what it is that you're doing at the time that you display a given menu. There's a whole lot of intelligence with Visual Studio, and this context sensitive functionality is just the tip of the iceberg. Now let's take a quick look at the toolbar. What you see here is the standard toolbar, located directly under the menu. The toolbar contains buttons for the most commonly used commands for your particular language of choice. You can add buttons or shortcuts to various functions quickly and easily. There's even a toolbar specifically for COBOL programmers that you will see if you have Fujitsu NetCOBOL for .NET installed. Let's take a look at the sides of the Visual Studio screen. Notice the box on the left-hand side of your screen. Here we see the Server Explorer and the Toolbox. The Server Explorer provides you with access to Windows Server components like Microsoft's SQL Server, other database servers, event logs, and messaging queues. The Toolbox tab provides you with access to the components for the designers. This is yet another instance where some of the items in the menu or toolbox will be grayed out depending upon what it is that you're doing. So, for example, if you're developing a Windows Form application, you will not be able to use the components in the toolbox that apply to web forms application development. Now, looking at the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice that there are tabs for the Solution Explorer, Class View, and Contents. The Solution Explorer is displayed by default and will allow you to see or modify your solution structure. Now, don't worry if you don't understand solutions just yet. I'm just introducing this information to you at this point. We'll cover Solution Explorer and Solutions and Projects in much more detail later on. Now, the Class View enables you to see your application as a hierarchy of classes rather than the normal file structure view. This is pretty handy if you're interested in drilling down into specific classes in your application. You can also see the Contents tab. One of the most interesting and coolest parts of the IDE is that you can dock tabs to a particular part of the IDE and have easy access to them. Now, some of the tabs or windows that aren't shown here would be a Properties window, which would allow you to set properties at design time rather than set all of the properties in your code. I'm sure you're going to find this to be very handy when you start working in the visual development environment. There's also a Bookmark window. Now, all of the bookmarks in your code can be viewed in this summary list. There's a Code Definition window. Now, this particular window is used for C# or C++ application projects. The reason that I mention this is that it is pretty likely that at some point in your .NET development experience, you'll have an opportunity to work with C# or C++ projects. As I mentioned before, mixed language development is one of the strengths of Microsoft's .NET technology. There's also a command window. The command window will allow you to directly execute commands in the Visual Studio environment. And there are still more windows. As your experience with Visual Studio grows, you'll no doubt have an occasion to utilize all of the windows and tools. Moving along now, you'll notice that the box is now highlighting the main part of the IDE. This is the primary workspace where you'll be working with your application files. Notice the first tab here, Start Page. This is the page that's initially displayed and can vary depending upon your selected profile, or more specifically, based on the profile that you selected when you installed Microsoft Visual Studio 2005. What you see here is the general profile. You should also note that I have information selected to display in my profile that pertains to Microsoft SQL Server. This information is completely configurable, and the topics can vary depending upon the choices that you make in your profile. I should also point out that the articles that you see come from the Microsoft Developers Network, or MSDN. Here we see a box that identifies the most recent projects that I've worked on. The number of recent projects displayed here is configurable from the Tools Options menu. In the Getting Started box, you'll see an information that comes from MSDN, or the Microsoft Developer Network. In the Visual Studio headlines, you'll see a feed from Microsoft of all of the news that pertains to Microsoft Visual Studio. And finally, we see articles here for Microsoft SQL Server. By the way, just a brief word about MSDN, or Microsoft Developers Network, is in order here. MSDN is a division of Microsoft responsible for managing the firm's relationship with developers. They run an information service that is technology-centric on Microsoft's .NET platform. It also provides information and articles on areas such as programming practices and design patterns. Many resources are available for free online, while others are available by mail or via a subscription. If you don't have a subscription to MSDN, I strongly recommend that you get one. I've found the information available to me as a subscriber to be absolutely first-rate and absolutely invaluable. Down at the bottom here, we see 3 additional tabs for the Error List window, Output window, and Task List window. The Error List window displays errors in your code following a build. We COBOL programmers usually call this a compile, but in the .NET world, we call this a build. The Error List window has a shortcut link to the problem or error code. All you need to do is click on the specific error, and through the magic of technology, you'll be immediately brought to the problem in your code. As you might imagine, this feature is a huge time saver. Now, the Output window is the main window that displays runtime and debug-generated output. And finally, the Task List window is a window that displays a list of automatically and manually created tasks that can be used to track development chores. You need to know that some of the tasks may be automatically generated. This applies to the Microsoft languages. Fujitsu NetCOBOL for .NET does not automatically generate task entries, but we have asked for this.